welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial for how I make my granny square sweater. If you watched my previous YouTube video, I did briefly explain how I go through the process of making my granny square items of clothing. I've done quite a few different things now, which you might have seen on my Instagram or TikTok. I explained the process whilst making a different item. It was a granny square shirt for my boyfriend, which we were taking on holiday, which he loved, by the way, and it looked great and I'm really happy with it. You can check out my social media because I've got some photos and videos of it up on there for you to see. The main item of clothing that I get a lot of questions on is my granny square sweater, which I did in 2 shades of blue. I get a lot of questions about this, and although I did briefly speak about it in that video, I thought I'd do a proper in-depth tutorial of how I made this whilst I make another one in a different colour. The yarn I used to make this sweater was Drops Melody, and I used the shades 7 and 21. I am going to be using the same yarn, Drops Melody, for the jumper I'm going to make today, but this jumper is it's really versatile. It's going to be a made to measure item, and because of that you can use any yarn that you want to use, any hook size. Honestly, the options are unlimited. I just personally really like using this yarn. It's really soft and fluffy and it's really lightweight, which I quite like for jumpers, and it's not itchy, which is another really important thing for me when I'm making items of clothing that I'm going to wear. So I'm going to use Drops Melody again, but the shades I'm using this time are this gorgeous pink and green. The pink one is colour number 6 and the green is 26. Really gorgeous pastel pink and green. I think this is called Pistachio Ice Cream, which honestly is perfectly named for it. I bought this yarn from Wool Warehouse. I will tag their website in the description box if you want to buy it from their website as well. The recommended hook size for Drops Melody is actually a few sizes bigger than what I like to use. I think it recommends an 8. It recommends an 8mm hook, but it's described as a chunky yarn, but if you have experience using this, you will know what I'm talking about. It's fairly fine. It's like a double knit thread, but because of all the fluffy fibres coming off of it, it makes it a bit chunkier. But I personally think that 8mm is a bit too big for my liking. It will make your stitches quite open and I'd prefer it to be a bit smaller. So I played around with it when I first used it, and the 6.5mm hook I just thought worked really well. So if you were going to use the same yarn as me for making your jumper, then I would recommend sizing down a few sizes for your hook size. So I'm going to be using the 6.5mm hook, and then I've got 2 green and 2 balls of pink. So I'm going to discuss how I work out sizing for this jumper, and then I will just get into it with making a granny square and the rest of the steps that you need to make this. So I like to get my measurements off of something that I already really like the fit of, which for this project was this cardigan. This is the Eternal Seasons cardigan. The pattern is by Jules Makes, I think that's her name. I will tag it in the description box. This was such a nice pattern to make. It's also quite good for beginners, I think. But I really liked the fit of this. So what I did was I measured the width of this because I wanted a jumper that was a similar size and fit to this one, and the measurement for the width was about 20 inches. So I knew that when it came to making this, I wanted it to be about 28 inches wide, and because I wanted it to be 2 big granny squares width, I had to half that measurement, which is 10 inches, and I had to make a granny square that was roughly 10 inches wide, and then just duplicate that. So as you can see, if I just hold this up to the side, to the middle, it's about 10 inches. I did 7 rounds for the granny squares, and as you can see, I alternated. So I started with the dark, went to light, dark, ending with a dark one. And then I did the opposite way around and started with the light, ended with the light. So it kind of gives a bit of a checkerboard kind of vibe. So I'm going to do the exact same thing with the pink and green, alternating them. I will show you how I make the granny squares. If you are new to crochet, then I will try and do a description of how I'm making that as I go along. But there are lots of videos online if you, I don't know, find mine a bit confusing, or you want to find something that's just a little more simplified. Granny squares are a really great thing to start with for beginners. So I will try my best to describe what I'm doing as I make one of them, and then you're just going to duplicate those. You need 4 panels for the front, 4 panels for the back, and then I will come back and show you what I did for the sleeves. So I'm going to start off with this pink colour, and I'm going to make a slip knot and put that onto my hook. I'm then going to chain 4 and then slip stitch into the first chain to make a little circle. So there's a little circle in there, and that's where we're going to be making our stitches for the first round. We're going to chain 3, which counts as a double crochet, and then double crochet into that center and double crochet again. What I like to do is keep this little tail in line with the circle, so that as we crochet that first round, it is tucked in and woven in underneath those stitches, and it just saves you a bit of time with your sewing at the end. So that's the first granny square cluster. We're then going to chain 2 because we're reaching a corner, and then we're going to do another cluster of 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3. We've got 2 clusters in a corner. We're going to make another corner, so chain 2 and make another cluster of 3 double crochets. It's 1, 2, 3. Another corner, 2 chains, and then the final cluster of 3 double crochets. 1, 2 and 3. We're then gonna do our last corner, chain 2, and then we're going to slip stitch into the top of that chain 3 to end the round. That can be a little bit fiddly to get your hook into sometimes if your chain is quite tight. So that is the first round complete. I am going to cut this, leave a bit of a tail for sewing, and then fasten off. Just make sure that's secure. And that is the first round of your granny square. I'm now going to switch colours. So I'm going to be using this green. Oh God, I love this green. This is so nice. So again, I'm going to make a slip knot, and then we need to join this onto our project. I'm going to join it into this corner here. So what I like to do is insert my hook into the space, and then put the yarn on my hook, tighten that knot and pull it through. We're then going to chain 3, which is the height of a double crochet, plus another 1, so chain 4 to reach us over to this side. We're going to work into this corner here. We're going to do a cluster of 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. This is a corner, so we're going to chain 2 and do another cluster of 3 double crochets. We then need to work over to this side, so we're going to chain 1, and then working into that chain 2 space, we're going to do a cluster of 3 double crochets. Chain 2 for the corner, and then another cluster of 3 double crochets into the same space. And that is what that is starting to look like. So every time you need to move over a straight side, you're going to chain 1 and then do a cluster. Every corner space you do a cluster of 3, chain 2 for the corner and another cluster of 3, and then you work along the next side. So I'm just going to continue this and then I'll come back at the end of the round. So I'm just on the last cluster now. I've done the cluster of 3, chain 2 for the corner, and then I'm only going to do 2 double crochets here because the chain that we made at the beginning of this round counts as the final double crochet. So I'm going to double crochet 2 into this space, and then I'm going to slip stitch into the 3rd chain. And that is that round complete. I'm going to cut the yarn again. Just make sure that tail is secure. And then we're going to go back to the pink colour for the next round. And we're just going to repeat these steps over and over until your square reaches the measurement that you need. So we're doing the whole width. Mine was 20 inches. I'm doing 2 squares wide, so I need my square to be 10 inches wide. So I'm going to keep adding rounds until the width is 10 inches, or whichever size you've decided yours is going to be. You might get it slightly under, slightly over. If you think, oh, it's a bit under, you do an extra round and then it's over that measurement that you want. Then you're going to need to decide whether you want it to be slightly oversized or a slightly more fitted jumper. Or you could, if you want, change your hook size, which is what I also did. Like I said, I'm not using the hook size that's recommended. I'm using the slightly smaller one. So it's a bit of trial and error for making your granny square the exact size that you need. But I mean, it's going to be a few millimeters or centimeters out. It's not going to be a big difference. So I'm going to continue these rounds, and I think it was 7 rounds I need for my one. So I will come back and show you the square when I have finished. Okay, so I've just done my 7th round, and this should be the measurement that I need it to be. That is what it looks like with the pink and green. I love this colour combo now that I've made that square. It's very much giving spring, Easter pastel vibes, which is just what I wanted. So I'm just going to measure the width of this, and it is exactly 10 inches, which is just what I need it to be. There we go. So I am now going to make, how many squares do I need? I need 8 squares. Ooh, throwing it on the floor. I need 8 squares. I'm going to do 4 with the pink in the middle and then green, pink, green ending in pink. And then I'm going to do 4 of the opposite colourway, which will be starting with green, ending with green, just to give a bit of a checkerboard look. You don't have to do that. You can make all of your squares in one colour, or you could do the same pattern as me but not switch them around for the checkerboard effect and just have them as stripy, or you could do more than 2 colours. Endless amount of options for how you want yours to look. So I'm going to make some more of these squares and then I will come back and show you the next step. Okay, so I've gone ahead and made 8 squares, and I have weaved in all the ends from colour changing. I normally am a nightmare and I wait until the very end to do that, but I thought I would do them as I go along just to save a bit of time at the end. So I've done all of the ends. I've also sewn 4 of the squares together to make one of the panels, which I will show you now how I do it and what technique I used. So that's the first panel. They're going to be identical, so that can be your front or back panel, but I will show you what I do with the next step. So when I'm sewing granny squares together, I like to use stitch markers just to hold the squares in place, and then as I go along sewing, I'll take them out as I reach them. So I'll just show you the layout. We're also going to be making sure we sew them together with the wrong sides facing. So the side that has all the little ends woven in is the side that's going to be facing when I sew them. I'm going to pin them together with the checkerboard effect, so a green one next to a pink one and then opposite way around for the bottom row. So I'll just attach these together now. So I'm going to sew these together now using the whip stitch method, and I will show you how I do that. So I'm going to be starting on the right hand side here, and I'm just using a metal darning needle. I'm going to be using the green yarn for sewing it together because I'm hopefully going to be able to use the leftover pink yarn for another project that I'm working on. So I'm just going to cut a piece of the green yarn about double the width of the piece. And then when you join it, make sure you leave a bit of a tail, which you can weave in as you go. So I'm just going to put this on my needle. And I'm going to be joining it at this marker here in the 2 corners of the granny squares. So you have a chain 2 corner here. We're just going to be going into one of those, and the same on this side. Pull that through, leave a bit of a tail, and then I just like to double knot that together to make sure it's secure. If you want, you can leave that tail out and weave it in at the end, but I find it a little bit easier to weave it in as you're sewing, and it just saves you a bit of time. So for the whip stitch, I'm going to be going through both loops. So at the top of this double crochet here, I'm going to go into 2 loops, and then the top of the green double crochet, go into the 2 loops and pull that through. And then the second double crochet, we're going into the top 2 loops of both of them, pull that through, make sure your tail is in the middle there, and it will just weave that in. And then the next one. And then we have a chain space, so we're going to go into both loops of that chain and the green and pull that through. So you're just going to keep doing that all the way across, and then you're going to turn your work and do the other side. Okay, so I now have my front and back panels, and the next step is going to be to pin them together in the corners and work out how wide we want the neck hole to be. So I'm going to put stitch markers in the top corners here, try it on, and then place stitch markers for where I want the neck hole to be, and we're going to sew along the top of both of those shoulders. Okay, so I've pinned the shoulders together, and then I've just put that on to make sure I'm happy with how wide the neck is going to be. And I am. So with the wrong side facing, the side that you've weaved all your ends in, you're going to do the whip stitch from the outer edge to the stitch marker at the edge of your neck, and then you're going to do the same thing on the other side, and that is your shoulder seams done. Okay, so I've sewn the shoulder seams together and that is what it's looking like, and it's still open at the sides. We're going to sew that together at the end. The next step is the sleeves. For the sleeves, we're going to be making granny squares again, and I personally like to carry on with the pattern of doing the alternate colours and then switching it round and starting with the other colourway like I did with this, and do that for the sleeves. So one of the sleeves will start with green and end with green, and then the other one will start with pink and end with pink. You don't have to do it like that. If you want your sleeves to be identical, then choose a colourway and do it like that. But I like to alternate and have a different one on each side. So what I'm gonna do is start by making a granny square with 7 rounds, just like I did for the body, and then I will pin it together with stitch markers and see if it's wide enough. If you want a slimmer sleeve, then you can do less rounds in your granny square. If you want it to be a bigger, like wider, baggy sleeve, then you're going to keep adding rounds until you're happy with the width of it. Don't worry about the length, because they're squares, it's probably going to end up shorter than you would actually like. Just working out the width of the sleeve is like the important first step for it. So I'm going to go and make some more squares, 2 squares, and then I will come back and show you how I'm working out the width of my ones. Okay, welcome back. Sorry for the change of scenery again. I think we've been in 3 locations now for this video, but this has been filmed over quite a few weeks because I'm working on quite a few projects at the moment, and I have finally settled on a space. I have a new desk area in my room and we're right by a window. So I think this location will stay. You'll probably see it again in more videos coming up soon. So I have made the 2 squares for the arms, and I've sewn the ends in at the back ready to go for the next step. I ended up doing 10 rows for the arm squares, and when I fold it in half, that's kind of the width for the sleeve that I want. A good idea sometimes is to just pin it in place so that it stays in half, put it on your arm and think, yeah, I like the width of it, or no, it's too much, undo a row. Or if you want wider sleeves, you can just keep going. Obviously, as you can see, if this is attached to my arm, it is far too short, but that is a problem that we will fix after we have sewn it onto the body. So I'm gonna switch my camera around so you can see what I'm doing from above, and we are going to sew the sleeves to the body. Okay, so I've turned my piece inside out and I have actually attached one of the sleeves already. I'm going to show you how I do it, but I'll just quickly show you what it looks like when it's done. What I like to do is I find the center point on the outside row of the square and the center point of the shoulder seam, and I'll just pin that in place and then pin it in place in the corner, and we just sew that all the way around. I then like to sew the sleeve seam all the way down that side, and then I do the side of the jumper last. So I'm just going to show you how I do that with the other sleeve now. So making sure that your body is the wrong side facing, and again with the square, just make sure it's the wrong side there. We're going to find the center point of this last round here. Just have a quick look. So the center point is in between these 2 clusters here. So I'm just going to place a stitch marker there. Then this is the side of our jumper, and we have our shoulder seam here. This is the outer edge of it, and I'm just going to then line up that stitch marker to the center point here. like that. And then I like to just attach the bottom corners as well, just so that they're all lined up and they don't move around too much. And the same on the other side. And there we go, that's now ready to sew. So I'm going to take my green yarn again and I'm just going to sew from that side to that side, fasten off and weave in both of the ends. I'll come back when I've finished that. Okay, so I've sewn that together and we're now going to take our work and fold it in half like this. Again, making sure that it's the wrong side facing and that the right side is on the inside. Then I'm just going to line this up and we are going to sew from underneath the arm to the end of the sleeve. We're just going to do a seam across here. I will do this and then I'll come back when it's finished and show you the next step. Okay, so I've sewn that seam together. And now we're on the last step of sewing, which is going to be to join the side panel together. Again, I'm just going to sew that as I've done everything else. I'm using the whip stitch. I will do it off camera, but you're just going to join from either under the arm or on the outer edge, the bottom edge, and just sew those two together. And then I'll come back and show you the last step. Okay, so I've done that final seam now. And I'm going to turn it through the right way. And it would be a good time to try your jumper on now, because we're going to work out how many rows we want to add to the bottom of the sleeves so that we're happy with the sleeve length. So I'm going to try this on now. Okay, so that is the jumper pretty much done. The only thing we need to do now is to make the sleeves longer. As you can see, that is far too short. So I'm going to add a few more rounds with the granny square clusters like you would making the granny square, but you're just going to be going around in a circle. Again, switching colours every other row if you are using more than one colour. I added 2 extra rows to the bottom of this sleeve already, and I thought that was enough, but I'm actually going to add, I think, maybe 2 more. So I will do the same amount on this side as well, and then I will show you that when it's finished. Okay, so that is the jumper finished. I added 4 rows on both of the sleeves and I'm really happy with the length of them now. I'll just show you what it looks like. I am probably posting this before Easter, which is perfect timing because this is really giving Easter vibes. Like these pink and green, I don't know what's more Easter than this. So this is perfect. I will be wearing it this weekend. I will just say that I know at the beginning of the video I said I used 2 each of the pink and green. I did actually run out of yarn in the middle of, not in the middle of this, kind of when I was doing the sleeves towards the end. And so I did have to get 1 more of each colour, but that was how much I had left over. So I used 2 and a bit balls of each colour. So that was a little bit annoying, but luckily they were the same dye lot, and I will be using the pink for another project that I'm working on at the moment, so it's actually quite useful to have a bit left over. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you do recreate one of these jumpers for yourselves, then please do tag me if you post them on social media. I will put my Instagram and TikTok handles at the top here. I love seeing everyone's creations, so yeah, please do tag me if you make anything for yourself. And the same goes for any of the other tutorials that I post or patterns that you buy from me on Etsy and Ravelry. I love seeing people's creations. If you did like this video, then it would be great if you could give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and then you can see other videos I've made and you'll get notified when I post more videos in the future. If you have any questions about the tutorial, then drop them in the comments or feel free to message me on Instagram or TikTok and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. And yeah, thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.